Brought to you by Penguin.
The Gene, An Intimate History by Siddhartha Mukherjee. Read by Dennis Boutsikaris.
An exact determination of the laws of heredity will probably work more change in man's outlook on the world and in his power over nature than any other advance in natural knowledge that can be foreseen. William Bateson. Human beings are ultimately nothing but carriers, passageways for genes. They ride us into the ground like racehorses from generation to generation. Genes don't think about what constitutes good or evil. They don't care whether we are happy or unhappy. We're just means to an end for them. The only thing they think about is what is most efficient for them. Haruki Murakami, 1Q84. Prologue. Families. The blood of your parents is not lost in you. Menelaus, The Odyssey. They fuck you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had, and add some extra just for you. Philip Larkin, This Be the Verse. In the winter of 2012, I traveled from Delhi to Calcutta to visit my cousin Moni. My father accompanied me as a guide and companion, but he was a sullen and brooding presence, lost in a private anguish that I could sense only dimly. My father is the youngest of 5 brothers, and Moni is his first-born nephew, the eldest brother's son. Since 2004, when he was 40, Moni has been confined to an institution for the mentally ill, a lunatic home, as my father calls it, with a diagnosis of schizophrenia. He is kept densely medicated, awash in a sea of assorted antipsychotics and sedatives, and has an attendant watch, bathe, and feed him through the day. My father has never accepted Moni's diagnosis. Over the years, he has waged a lonely counter-campaign against the psychiatrists charged with his nephew's care, hoping to convince them that their diagnosis was a colossal error, or that Moni's broken psyche would somehow magically mend itself. My father has visited the institution in Calcutta twice, once without warning, hoping to see a transformed Moni living a secretly normal life behind the barred gates. But my father knew, and I knew, that there was more than just avuncular love at stake for him in these visits. Moni is not the only member of my father's family with mental illness. Of my father's 4 brothers, 2, not Moni's father, but 2 of Moni's uncles, suffered from various unravelings of the mind. Madness, it turns out, has been among the Mukherjees for at least 2 generations, and at least part of my father's reluctance to accept Moni's diagnosis lies in my father's grim recognition that some kernel of the illness may be buried like toxic waste in himself. In 1946, Rajesh, my father's 3rd-born brother, died prematurely in Calcutta. He was 22 years old. The story runs that he was stricken with pneumonia after spending 2 nights exercising in the winter rain, but the pneumonia was the culmination of another sickness. Rajesh had once been the most promising of the brothers, the nimblest, the supplest, the most charismatic, the most energetic, the most beloved and idolized by my father and his family. My grandfather had died a decade earlier in 1936. He had been murdered following a dispute over mica mines, leaving my grandmother to raise 5 young boys. Although not the oldest, Rajesh had stepped rather effortlessly into his father's shoes. He was only 12 then, but he could have been 22. His quick-fire intelligence was already being cooled by gravity, the brittle self-assuredness of adolescence already annealing into the self-confidence of adulthood. But in the summer of 46, my father recalls, Rajesh had begun to behave oddly, as if a wire had been tripped in his brain. The most striking change in his personality was his volatility. Good news triggered uncontained outbursts of joy, often extinguished only through increasingly acrobatic bouts of physical exercise, while bad news plunged him into inconsolable desolation. The emotions were normal in context. It was their extreme range that was abnormal. By the winter of that year, the sine curve of Rajesh's psyche had tightened in its frequency and gained in its amplitude, the fits of energy tipping into rage and...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?